Google Analytics 4, everyone's favorite web analytics software. Okay, so maybe not everyone's favorite. Okay, actually, it seems like a lot of people kind of hate it. And I get it. The rollout of GA4 has been pretty rocky. In fact, for a lot of people who were previously on Universal Analytics and upgraded to GA4, a lot of people are just downright frustrated. Now, the thing is, GA4 introduced a completely new measurement model that is actually really, really powerful. It's amazing some of the things that it can track out of the box without any customization. And furthermore, it makes it really easy to customize things that you'd have to get a little bit technical with in Universal Analytics. In GA4, to set up things like custom events, it can actually be really easy and completely codeless. The problem is that a lot of these new superpowers have come at a cost. And that cost has really been rooted in the ease of use of just pulling data through a lot of the pre-made reports that were available in Universal Analytics. The hard truth is that the appeal of GA, aside from it being free software, is that it was just really, really easy to use. And there were a lot of marketers or even small business owners that would use Google Analytics without really doing a lot of technical stuff and just set it up straight out of the box. And they'd probably be using it for more basic use cases, but it was enough for them to get valuable insight in terms of how their website was doing and how they can make improvements to it. So a lot of those really easy to use reports in Universal Analytics have been stripped away. And although we have all these really new powerful features for doing customization and custom event tracking, the reality is this new version of Google Analytics has marginalized an enormous base of people that maybe don't have those more intermediate to advanced needs and were really comfortable with the original version of Google Analytics. But for now, I'm here to help you get the most out of Google Analytics 4. You can actually customize GA4 quite a bit and make it more tailored to what you want to be seeing. The unfortunate part is that making a lot of these changes, though not technical, are not that intuitive. And so I'm here to walk you through how you can fully customize the Google Analytics dashboard and create custom reports that are based on the data and dimensions that you want to see. And before we jump in, if you get to the end of this video and you feel like you've learned something, I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a like and to subscribe to my channel. So without further ado, let's jump straight in. So the first thing I wanted to show you is how you can actually customize all the existing reports that you'll see, even as a default, without creating any brand new reports. All of these reports that you can get access to under acquisition engagement can all be fully customized. Now, you will need to have either admin or edit rights to your Google Analytics account. And if you don't, or if you don't see this little pencil icon or the library link down here, it might be because you don't have the right user access. So if you don't see these options and you can't follow along, you might want to just check with your administrator to see if you can get that access. Now, once you have that access, what you can do is you can click this little pencil icon and it'll allow you to tailor what is being shown to you. Now, before we get into that, I have to talk about the fact that there are two different types of reports in Google Analytics. There's something called an overview report, which looks exactly like this. And what the overview report is a collection of cards. And each of these cards contains data. And you can either use the existing cards in the library that Google Analytics provides. You can also create brand new cards. And the overview report is essentially this curation of cards. It provides an overview. Now, there's a second type of report called the detailed report. And this is an example of a detailed report. Now, the detailed report usually has this exact same structure every time. There'll be one or two charts at the top here. You can customize this. And there'll always be a table that gives you more detailed granular data. And you can customize exactly what dimensions are being shown here or what metrics are being shown across the columns. So a detailed report has this kind of structure with both the charts at the top and then a table, whereas the overview report is essentially this kind of curation of cards. And you can actually connect these as well. You'll see that this card is actually connected to a detailed report. So I can click on this view user acquisition and it allows me to drill down into the detailed report. But let's go back up to the acquisition overview. Let's click on edit here. And this will allow you to now edit this report. All you can really do here is add or remove cards. You can have up to 16 cards on a single overview report. And you can add the cards by clicking here. And this cards library is a little disorienting the first time you see it. Some of these are created by Google as part of your kind of initial setup of GA. you also have the ability to create new cards. And you'll notice that these cards are all organized by the report collections that you see. You didn't see this business objectives one because that's actually a collection that is unpublished in my library. If I were to publish it, you'd see all these other reports and cards. But the cards are essentially organized by the collections that you create. And if you create a new collection with a series of reports in it, you'll be able to find those cards here. Now you can see I can add new cards to this report. So I can say, okay, well, I want this users by interest card on here and users by gender. And I can add these cards. And you'll see them just appear at the bottom here. I can reorganize them. So if I want users by interest to be second, I can reorganize them. And there it is. And I can also remove them. So I can delete one of them if I want, and it's gone. When you're done, you can click on save. And you can either save it as a brand new report, or I can save the changes to the existing report. I'm actually going to click back here and discard this because I don't want to make these changes. Now let's go to the user acquisition section, because this is an example of the other type of report, which is the detailed report. And if I go to click edit on this, it's going to look a little bit different. You now have the ability to customize which dimensions and metrics are being shown. You can apply filters that apply to the entire data set. You can do a little bit of customization of the charts, and you can also create new cards from here. So let's start with the dimensions. If you're not familiar with dimensions, they are essentially attributes for your data. So a metric is something that actually quantifies something. So a session or a user or a duration are all examples of metrics. They're counting something. But let's say you want to look at total sessions on your website and you want to break it down by the country for where your visitors came from. The country is an example of a dimension. The dimensions that are on this report all relate to user acquisition. So they're where did the users come from? So they're dimensions of your data. So they just allow you to see different aspects or attributes of the data that's being counted within Google Analytics. And you'll notice that I can change the default here. So if I want to set user medium as the default channel group, when a user loads this report, it will show the default dimension as the starting point. But remember, any dimension that is here will be essentially accessible through this drop-down list here. So you can add new dimensions either just by scrolling through this list, or you can also run a search. So let's say I want a dimension for like the user interests. There it is. And I can click apply. And now that new dimension will be available under this list here. And there it is, all these user interests. Now I can also customize the metrics. I can reorder them. So if I want to say, let's put engaged sessions per user higher than engagement rate, I can move that up. I can delete them, and I can also add new metrics. So if I wanted to add, say, users, I can just run a search there. And there's the users metric. And if I click apply, you can see that it will now add that as a new column in my table. And if I don't want it to be all the way over here, I can go back to the metrics and I can just drag this up. And now you see users is over here. And you'll also notice that there's this little arrow on the first one here. This just tells you which column do you want to be sorted from highest to lowest when the report is loaded. So right now it defaults to new users being the base column that is sorted from highest to lowest. But if I wanted engaged sessions to be the default column for sorting, I just click on this, click apply, and it will essentially change which column here is being sorted. Now, there's a couple of other things you can do on this report. You can actually customize the charts here. It's very, very limited. You can either show one chart, two charts, or no charts. So for example, I can click the little eye icon here and it'll remove the line chart, or I can also remove the bar chart and they're gone. Or I can also change the chart type. You can choose between bar chart, scatter plot, and line chart. So here is the scatter plot. And scatter plots are really useful charts because they allow you to explore the relationship between two different variables. And I'll show you how you can do some interesting analysis based on Google Analytics data. But the first thing we have to get to is how do you actually control which variables are being plotted on the X and Y axes? And the answer to that is a little confusing. The behavior of this chart is not really all that intuitive. But basically, the way that this works is that the x-axis will be based on the column that you have most recently sorted, and the y-axis will be based on the column that you sorted before that. So for example, let's say I wanted to put engagement rate on the y-axis and sessions on the x-axis. I'm going to sort engagement rate first by clicking this. And you'll see that it'll first go to the x-axis. And then I'm going to follow that by sorting sessions, which will then put sessions on the x-axis, and engagement rate is now up on the y-axis. So it's not really all that intuitive, but once you kind of wrap your head around it, it makes sense. So let's do another example. Let's say I want to explore the relationship between users and bounce rate. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to metrics and I'm going to add bounce rate. And there is bounce rate there. I just have to scroll a bit over. It's a little bit of a crowded table. So let me just quickly let's remove event count from here. And so there is bounce rate on the far right side of our table. And let's say I want to also look at the relationship between bounce rate and users by country instead of interest. So for that, I'm going to go to dimensions and I'm going to add the dimension for country. Is apply, and we can just change this drop down here to country, and there we go. But we still have sessions and engagement rate. So what I want to do is I want to have bounce rate on the y-axis and I want to have users on the x-axis. So in order to do that, I'm going to sort bounce rate first, which will first put it on the x-axis. Then I will sort users. And there we go. We've got users on the x-axis, bounce rate on the y-axis. And this is kind of an interesting chart. It's showing me the relationship between visitor quality by traffic volume, i.e. users, and the country. And you can see from this that I have a lot of traffic from the US. It's so much so that it's kind of making this chart hard to read. So let's say I want to ignore the US for now. I can analyze them in isolation. That's not to say that you would want to completely ignore this traffic, because it's, for me, my number one traffic source in terms of country. But for the sake of this analysis, I just want to remove this as an outlier from the data set. To do this, all I'd have to do is add a filter, and then we're going to add a filter for country. And in this case, you want to choose does not exactly match. And then we're going to select United States, click apply, and there we go. It has now filtered out the US, and it kind of opens up the rest of these different countries. And there's some interesting insights here. You can see that after the US, one of the top countries in terms of traffic volume during this period was India, and the traffic quality is actually pretty decent because the bounce rate is about 40% here. On the other hand, up here, we've got Lithuania, which is a really high bounce rate, almost 100%, but it's also very low traffic volume. So scatter plots, very, very useful charts for doing analysis that explores the relationship between different variables. The only problem is that the way that Google Analytics 4 does this is not terribly intuitive. But just to recap, the way that you plot variables on the X and Y axes is by sorting columns, where the most recently sorted column is on the X axis and the column that you sorted before that will be on the Y axis. Now, I can also create new cards here. So if I click on create new card, what it will do is it will allow you to generate a card based on the metrics and dimensions that are already on this report. So you won't see all the dimensions available in GA, only the ones that you've added to this report. So if you wanted to see a new dimension, you'll just click X here, you'll go back to dimensions and add it there. Then you can go to the card and say, okay, I want to create a new card for interests. And you can add multiple dimensions here. You can also add country. That just means that this card will allow you to change the dimension as well. And then you can add the metrics. So let's say I want to do, let's just put bounce rate. So bounce rate by interests. Now, the last thing is you can choose the visualization. There's bar charts. There is pie charts, which will truncate. It won't show everything. There's line charts, which will be extraordinarily inappropriate for this type of data. And then there's also tables, which might actually be the best way. You can also filter this as well. Unfortunately, you cannot give your cards a name. It's really shocking that you can't give these cards a name. Maybe they'll change that later on. So you'll just have to remember what the dimensions and metrics of the card is, and you can go find it later on. I'll show you how to do that. So you can click apply. So in this case, I'm going to save this as a new report. I'll just leave it as copy of user acquisition. You can give it a description if you want. And now if I go back, you might say, okay, hey, where is this report? That copy of user acquisition is not here. This is the other acquisition report that I didn't customize. And the answer to that question is you have to add it to a collection of reports. And if you go to library, this is where you can add new reports you've created, but also create new collections. So there is my new detailed report that I created, copy of user acquisition. And you can see it's not currently in a collection. I could add that report to this lifestyle collection of reports, which is this set of reports over here, acquisition, engagement, etc. Notice that you can also create new collections. A free GA setup will allow you to create up to 6 collections max. And notice that not all of them are published here. So this business objectives collection, which has a whole bunch of different reports, is unpublished. I can click publish here. And when I publish this collection of reports, there it is. I'm going to unpublish this one for now. You can see that I've got this curated reports collection here. Let's say I want to add this copy of acquisition to the curated reports. I'm going to click edit collection. And you can see that you can create topics, which are these things: user profiles, content performance. So because this new report is related to traffic acquisition, let's create a new topic called acquisition. And I can add my reports here. So this is the thing that is really frustrating about adding the reports here. You've got the list of detailed reports and list of overview reports, and it just shows you absolutely everything that's been created. This is why it's generally, I think, good practice to have some naming conventions for your reports, because if you start creating a lot of them, they will be impossible to find. So you can see in this example here, I called it custom. You can just maybe start giving them some special names so they're easy to find, because you can get lost in this very quickly. And every topic you create under a collection, you can add one overview report and multiple detail reports. And here's my copy of user acquisition. This is a detail report. And I just drag it over here. And there it is. So I'm going to click save. And I can create a new collection, or I can save it as a current collection. So I'm going to save it as current. So if I go back now and look at my curated reports, now there's a new topic here that I just added called acquisition. And there is my copy of user acquisition. And if I click on this, you will now see my scatter plot here and my fully custom report. And if you want to edit this again, you can just edit it right from here, or you can go back to the library. So let me just show you a few last things here. Let's create a new collection. They give you some templates for collections that you can set up, or you can just create a blank collection. Let's call this custom user reports. So this is the collection name, and you can create new topics. So let's say this is going to be called user source. And let's create another topic called user technology. So I could look through all the reports that already exist. And again, remember, some of these are reports that were created by Google, and some of them are ones that you've created. In this case, let's say I've created the collection before I've created the report. So I'm just going to set this up as a placeholder for now. So I've got a collection called custom user reports that's currently empty. Let's click save. I'm going to go back, and there is my new collection there. It is unpublished, and it won't appear here until I publish it. Now let's create some reports for this. It'll ask you, do you want to create an overview report or a detail report? Remember, the overview report is essentially a curation of cards, and I generally recommend that you start by creating detail reports first, then the overview report last. So we're going to create a new detail report. You can either use one of the templates here, or you can start from a blank canvas. Now, there is something very confusing here. I generally recommend you start from a template, because what I've noticed is if I go and create a blank report, I do not have access to all of the dimensions. So for example, I've got this detailed report here, but what I notice is that for some reason, a lot of the dimensions are going to be unavailable. For example, let's say I want to add a dimension for the traffic or session source. They have these source and medium dimensions under attribution, but this is a different thing. This is if you set up some kind of custom attribution for your website. And if you don't, if you add this as a dimension, it'll show up as 0. The traffic source here is only showing you session manual ad content and term. It's not showing you session medium or session source. Where are they? For some reason, when you create a blank report, it doesn't show you all of the dimensions. So I highly recommend that you start by creating a report from one of these templates. And because I want to deal with traffic acquisition, I'm going to create a report using this traffic acquisition. Now, it will pre-make this for you. Let's say you don't want any of this. You want to start from scratch. You can go in and delete all this. It's completely up to you. The good news is that now it gives you access to those dimensions that are not searchable within the dimension finder. So these are the things that I wanted, like session default channel grouping or session medium, which is the breakdown of organic versus direct traffic. So the only way to really get access to these dimensions that I can't find in the dimension finder is to create your detailed report from one of these templates. And based on the type of template, you'll probably be able to find the dimensions that you'll want to use. I'm going to go through and I'm going to customize this. Let's say I don't want the line chart because it's really ugly. So we've just got the one bar chart. And let's say I'm going to remove a bunch of these. I don't want revenue. I don't want conversions. Say I also want to add, say, bounce rate. Let's say duration. Let's move these all the way up to here, bounce rate and duration. Click apply. It's going to update my table here based on my new metrics, and I can click save. This is where I recommend you add some custom naming conventions so this report is easy to find. So I'm going to call this custom, and let's call this user traffic sources. And remember, I can also create custom cards. So let's also create a new card here, and we'll call this default channel grouping. We'll add a metric for bounce rate. This is kind of an interesting card here, which basically shows the average bounce rate by different channel groups. You can see that the organic traffic generally drives very good quality traffic, lower bounce rate, versus the direct and unassigned values have higher bounce rates, as well as email. So let's click apply. Now I've created this new card called bounce rate by session default channel grouping. We'll save this again, save changes to current report. Now after that, I'm also going to create a new overview report. Remember, with the overview reports, what I can do is just start adding cards. You just saw that I created a new card, which was bounce rate by the default channel grouping sources, which is a pretty interesting card. So you might say, well, where is that card? Well, you remember the cards here are all organized by the collections that you have created. Now, unfortunately, you will not be able to view new collections until you've at least published it one time. And so in order to find that new card that I created, we have to go back out. And what we're going to do is we're going to edit the collection first. And we're going to add that new detailed report into that collection. So remember, I gave it a custom name, and it was this one, custom traffic sources. So I'm just going to drop it into the topic called user source, save it, save changes to current collection. And then I'm also going to publish this. So publish it. So you can see my custom user reports is now published. And if I look over on the left side here, there is the collection and there's my new report. Now that I've done this, I can go and create my new overview report. And if I click add card, you will now see there is my custom user reports, and there is the new special card that I created called bounce rate by default channel grouping. Let's add both of these. Click add cards. There are my new special cards. We're going to click save. We'll call this user source overview. Add in that custom so I can remember an easy way to find it. Click save. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to edit that collection again. So let's call it edit collection. And I have to click on overview reports first, then custom. And there it is. It was the user source overview. I'm going to drag this over and it'll drag it to the overview report. Remember, you can only create one overview report per topic here. And you can add in multiple detailed reports if you want. So I'm going to click save again, and then I'll click back. And now you'll find when you go to this custom user reports, now there is the overview report, and there are the two cards that I added there. And you'll notice that they're both linked to the underlying detailed report that those cards were created from. And you can either click here, or you can actually just click here, and you can drill down into that detailed report, which is here. So there you have it. With just a few clicks, you can actually fully customize the Google Analytics 4 interface. And because it's not that intuitive, you may find yourself having to come back to this video and watch it a couple times, and that's okay. So feel free to save this video and come back to it whenever you need. So that's it for today. I hope this video was helpful for you, and thanks again for watching.